came across this article, and this is something that I want to hear your opinion of, because I might be wrong here, and this might just be a trend or a phase, and the passion and the artistic values in design is actually gonna come back eventually. But I want to show you this article and then show you what's happening today in the design world, not just in automotive design. I'm gonna show you how sort of, I don't know how to put this, but the removal of any sort of identity in products and cars and architecture, and how the introduction of extreme minimalism is affecting products and their identity. So I'm gonna compare a couple of things such as subway stations, telephone booths, and so on to show you exactly what has happened the last couple of years. But first of all, let's have a look at this article here. So this is Volvo says brain lifts and not facelifts will become the new norm. Is a smarter car more important than a sexier one? So traditional car facelifts have emphasized cosmetic updates may give way to brain lifts, as Volvo calls them, with a greater focus on software, according to Volvo's chief commercial officer. For years, facelifts have been a little more than marketing exercises to bring attention to models as they age. I think they are a little bit more than that, because you have a lot of times facelifts come with big upgrades to the powertrains as well, but upgraded software can tangibly improve the driving and the ownership experience. So it feels like we're gonna go to a lot more digitalized driving experience, which I don't see why that would be necessary, because a car is supposed to take you from point A to point B in the simplest way possible. So autopilot, sure, you can add that to cars if you really want to have autopilot, but this feels like we're now moving into some sort of world where you're completely disconnected from the actual driving experience, and instead rely 100% on software taking over with these brain lifts, as they call it. They also say that get the right core computing and the right kind of intelligence in the car. That's going to be more important than the styling of the car. And then we have the new interior of the EX90 SUV, which I made a video on here, and I actually like this design on the exterior. But the interior feels like it's way ahead of the exterior design when it comes to this aggressive minimalism. It feels like the exterior is gonna follow that trend as well, which I hope it doesn't, but I'm gonna show you a couple of examples in Photoshop later. Going back to the exterior design, we can see how the Volvo EX90 already supports the philosophy explained. It looks like it could easily be an evolutionary upgrade from the XC90, which I completely agree with. I think the proportions very similar to the XC90, but it has a much more modern look to it, and by modern I mean a lot more minimalist look to it. And we expect Volvo's hyper-focused approach to software will be felt in a big way across the industry over the next years, and I think this is gonna transform not just in the automotive industry but also into every single type of design where you have artists putting in their efforts and trying to make something beautiful. I think that's going to be reduced in favor of installing new software and new intelligences in these products. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of examples here of what I'm talking about, so hopefully it makes sense what I'm trying to say here and my point. So here we have an architectural example, and here to the left, this is the gorgeous cathedral in Barcelona, the Gaudí Cathedral, with a lot of small details, and you can see that the people who built this put in a lot of effort into making this beautiful, adding lines and features that don't necessarily have a functional reason to be there, but just for the aesthetics of the building. And to the right, we have a modern skyscraper with absolutely zero personality. You will never remember this if you see it one time, but you will never forget the Gaudí Cathedral after seeing it one time. And here's another example of a phone booth. So here we have a vintage, classic, beautiful wooden phone booth where the artist put in a lot of effort into putting in details such as these rounded pieces here, the lines in the top part, this chamfer, and the metal pieces, the bars going inside of this gorgeous glass. And just looking at the telephone itself in here, it feels like a piece of art, and you want to go in and kind of feel the materials of this object. Looking at the new modern ones, I mean, it feels like this is such an industrial piece of metal with just an industrial telephone inside of it, and it's painted red too, which I don't understand why. At least it gives it a splash of color to it. But the overall design, is there any sort of passion in the design of this thing, or any sort of spirit of an artist inside of this phone booth? I don't think so, specifically not comparing it to this gorgeous piece of telephone booth right here. Another example are these beautiful subway entrances that we have in Paris, and these are still there today. Just look at all the details. You could just wander around this thing and just take in all the small details and sort of organic shapes that we have in this beautiful piece. We also have a centerpiece up here with these dimmed windows, almost creating some sort of ribs going at the top part of this construction. And now compare it to a modernized, minimalized version of a subway entrance. I think this is in New York. I could be wrong, but what we have here is just a couple of bricks or rectangles put together in a black color as well. There's zero personality in this design, and there's nothing that you're gonna remember. It's the same thing with the cathedral. There's nothing that's gonna stick out. Art is supposed to invoke a feeling when you see it. Any sort of art is supposed to make you think and remember the piece that you're looking at, and this completely lacks any of that. There's zero details in this subway entrance. Comparing it to the French one over here, it has nothing to say. It can't offend anybody because there is nothing to be offended by, because there are zero details in these type of designs. Now I want to show you that there is actually some exceptions to these rules, that new isn't always necessarily worse. But here we have, I believe this is an old subway station in New York. Absolutely beautifully done with the patterns and these gorgeous domes that we have going across the entire way down. It feels nice. It feels like this is a place that I wouldn't mind actually waiting for the train. And here we have a modern subway station. Completely lacks any sort of soul, and it's sterile and cold, and no effort in making it a beautiful place to be, especially since these are places that you often wait a couple of minutes for the train, so you want to have some sort of impact of what you're looking at in your surroundings, which this completely lacks. However, this is still a modern subway station designed by none other than Zaha Hadid. And I think you can definitely see that with these curvatures and these organic shapes that is typical for her design style. I think this is a beautiful way of designing something modern and still making it a beautiful environment to be in. I also like that these LEDs at the floor kind of guides the passengers to the train. I think that's a cool little detail, in addition to these organic columns that we have going the entire length of this train station. Now let's move into car design, because I think car design both in the exterior, but as I said, the interior these days, they are just completely going in the wrong direction. Every single concept car that comes out now looks like you're sitting in a bathtub with an iPad. That's it. There is nothing, no details and no passion from the interior designers. I would not want to be an interior designer today, or maybe I would, because maybe then I had the opportunity to actually change where this is heading. So have a look at this Mercedes 300 SL. Look at all the small details and the different materials used. We have different materials for this, probably 10 different materials just for the steering wheel, and these chrome bezels for these gauges. Beautiful. And every single little button feels like effort were put into it to make it the exact shape that the artist, the interior designer in this case, wanted it to be. Even these gauges right here, I think this is a beautiful touch to just have indents for your fingers here in this chrome, probably vent controls. And also looking at this radio, it feels like it's connected to the rest of the interior, right? Because we have a similar feel for everything going on. There's no piece that feels out of place. It feels like every single piece in this interior has the right to be there, and the interior itself feels like you're sitting inside of a piece of art. Now, comparing this to the completely anonymous and lack of any sort of identity interior of modern cars. Here we have a Tesla Model 3. You have a steering wheel, pretty much the entire steering wheel is the exact same material all around, plastic. And then you have this iPad stuck right in the middle with zero integrations in the rest of the design. It just feels like it's there, but it's not integrated with anything else in the interior. So what this does is this trend is creating a removal of any sort of identity, and also removal of detail. There are not a lot of details anymore in either in product design or car design. And the thing, when you do this to automotive design, when you treat automotive design the same way you do as product design, you have those kind of morph together, and you no longer have automotive design, which is supposed to be a feeling when you look at the front end of the car. It's supposed to have a facial expression. For example, the BMW M5 E39, when you look at the front end of that car, it communicates to you that I'm gonna take you from point A to point B. No matter if we're going through a blizzard or if we're going through a desert storm, I will get you there because I have this confident face. And that is something that slowly and over time is getting diluted into these product design. We're actually driving cell phones these days. So here's another good example of car design that's kind of morphed into something that isn't the same as it was in the 60s. Up here, this is one of the most beautiful rear ends of any car, in my opinion, the 67 Fastback Mustang. I love this design. It's one of my favorite all-time cars. Look at the chrome pieces here, for example, and the Mustang lettering separated. Each letter is separated. Then you have the GT in the fuel cap right there, and these lines feels like they could have been done today. I think this is such a cool design with this wing going in and then kind of creates this corner up here dipping down, and then we have this little ducktail almost, or trunk lid sticking out a little bit, creating this space for the Mustang lettering. It's a beautiful rear end. Looking at the new one, it is still a good design. It's a cool looking car, but just look at all the detail that is lost in modern cars, and the lack of differentiating the material choices of the car. This feels very solid. It still looks like a Mustang. I think Ford did a great job keeping the identity of a Mustang with these taillights and the deck lid here being sitting a little bit inside of the rear end, but it's still not the same when it comes to attention to detail and craftsmanship in car design today. Then we have the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale. This cost $17,000 when it was new in '69. They only made 18 examples of this car, and today, if you bought it for $17,000 in the 60s, you could sell it today for $10 million. And just have a look at how beautifully sculpted this design is. The 60s to me was the golden era of car design. I think that's when the manufacturing methods actually caught up with the designers, what they envisioned in their sketches. The manufacturers at this time was actually able to build the visions that the designers had, and you can see that in the entire in the whole decade of the 60s, just how many beautiful cars came out of this decade. And now comparing this to the almost ghost car that is the new BMW concept, the color shifting concept, which I also made a video on, and I thought this was, graphic wise, it still looks like a BMW because we have the two kidneys right here, and we have the kind of two headlights, the angel eyes in a new version right here, and we have the Hofmeister kink in the rear. So the graphic details are still there, but this, I mean, there's zero details in this design, and that's again the same problem with the entire automotive design industry. We're moving into consumer electronics and moving away from the artistic and the emotional part of automotive design, which I think is pretty sad. You see that in logos as well. Just have a look at the, I don't know how many new car manufacturer logos has gone with this simplistic minimalist style. We have Kia, we have Nissan, we have Volvo, and we also have BMW, which you can see the logo differences in the thumbnail of this video. So I want to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think this is just a phase and we're gonna go back to creating cars that actually have an emotional attachment to their designs, or are we moving into actually turning automotive design into consumer electronics? Let me know what you think in the comments below.